Hi, everyone. All right. Welcome to the Affordable Materials Grants Interest Meeting. This is going to be um, an overview of exactly how to apply for a grant. We've done this before, and we've included a lot of conversations, people introducing themselves and stuff like that. But because stuff has changed so much in this round on how to apply, the application forms look very different from what they used to. We're going to go right into it because we want to make sure that we save enough time to do a run through of the new forms and let y'all know how it is. Uh, yeah, and chat is on for this meeting, so please do use the chat if you have any questions, and I'll be able to see that as we're going through the slides, and then I'll be checking on it, and Nikita, who is also here, will be checking on it as well. So I'm Jeff Gallant. I'm the Program Director of Affordable Learning Georgia. Nikita, would you like to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Nikita Afaha, and I'm the program manager for Affordable Learning Georgia, and team up with Jeff to run this program.
All right. So we're going to go right into it. So before we really get started, there's just a quick heads up that our grants are funded by USG funding. And because of that, they can only go to teams that are located at USG institutions. So if you're not at a USG institution, but you're participating in a team that is based at a USG institution, that's fine. Usually what happens is your institution would bring them in as a contractor or a consultant. That is something that happens quite a bit. That's totally fine. If you're doing a transformation grant application, and we'll get into what transformation grants are in just a little bit, but if you're listing student savings, you want to list just the student savings that affect USG institutions because that's what these are going to be measured on for impact, and that's what these are going to be tracked on later on for data. So we are saying this has saved USG students this much over time. If that's taking place in East Texas, that's great, but that's not something that we can present as part of a USG program. Now, if you're a team that's from somewhere else, if you're an affiliate organization, I know I just heard from Lumen Learning because they do OER-based courseware, and they want to see this. Like, that's great. You are totally welcome to listen in and be here. And if you have any questions about how we run the program, email us if you want more info. Visiting institutions that want to run a grants program like this are totally welcome as well. Yeah. But if you're in an institution that is not within the USG, we can't provide funding to that institution in that same way. So contractors are fine. If you're doing savings across multiple institutions, be sure to only list the ones that are USG. And you're totally welcome to listen, no matter where you're coming from. So there are a few links that you'll want to know, and these should be clickable on your screen because we are running the PowerPoint natively. The apply for a grant page is the first one, the number one thing that you'll need in order to, of course, apply for a grant. It's got everything from the deadlines for when applications need to be submitted to the RFP for the current round, to the rubrics that everything's going to be evaluated on, all the way to the link to the online form that you'll use to complete your application. That's going to be the super important page as you start this application process. If you want to know what's happened at your institution already, go to the Grants Archive page. It's in the same little section of our website over on the grants section of it. And this is a Power BI driven list where you could just look up, let's say, what project lead has done which projects, or what institution has done a lot of projects in biology. You could start looking for that stuff in the grants archive. You could filter um, by different facets, and you can narrow the list down really well. Now, if you're getting started, you've never done anything like this before, or you're just you know about OER or you know about affordable materials and you want to do a project like this, but you're not sure where to start, Contact your champions at your institution. The Staff and Champions page has a list of the champions, which are a faculty champion, someone who teaches with OER or teaches with affordable materials, a design champion, an instructional designer who helps out in designing affordable materials, and a library champion, someone who can help with navigating the OER landscape, finding things, getting to know copyright and open licensing. So your champions are all listed on the Staff and Champions page. Another very helpful page to get to know on Affordable Learning Georgia. We're going to do a quick overview of what these grants are, what they do, and what they focus on, and then we'll get into exactly how to apply and what to consider as you're doing that. Our first category is the one that we got started with all the way back in 2014. That's our transformation grants. They are funding for faculty and professional staff to work together and transform courses. Yep, oh, I did hear, Davey, that Dr. Devarapu is no longer at Albany State. We're going to have to get a turnover process going there. Yeah, the email bounced. Yep, thank you. Yeah, so if you have expensive commercial materials that you've had to require in your courses for a long time, you need a lot of time in order to transform your stuff to an affordable course, this is the grant that will allow funding for it. You are saving students money in this process. This is the original ALG grant. The funding structure for this is the most per team member. It is 5,000 maximum award per team member, and that can be for salary on course overload, course release. It can be for professional development, travel. It depends on what your institution allows sometimes. For example, if you are a 12-month position, if you've got a 12-month position at a place, sometimes that's fine and you can do a course release. Sometimes it's fine and you can do overload. Sometimes they will not allow you to do either of those things, and they will have alternatives. They can meet those alternatives as well. Just be sure to check in with your grants or business office and check out the RFP for more details on this. There are also additional project expenses that you can include. They need to be justified in the proposal budget and make sure that they are aligned with the rest of it. So if you mention something in your budget, be sure that it's covered in the proposal, like exactly why you're going to be using this and what you're going to be using it for. And the maximum award here is 30,000. Now, I'm saying maximum in a lot of these cases. Let's say that you have a team of 12 people. They're all going to reduce the amount of time that everybody needs because there's just so many folks who are going to be able to participate. Well, that's great. You can't multiply 12 by 5,000 and get a $30,000 maximum award. What you would have to do is reduce the amount of award per team member in order to meet that. If you want to include a lot of additional project expenses that are necessary for the project, justified in the application, and you have 6 team members, you would not be taking the $5,000 maximum award because then you wouldn't have any budget for that. So that's why we say maximum here. You don't just put in the maximum amount per team member by default. You really want to make sure that this matches what the project needs, how many people are on this project, how much time that you're putting in, what are the supplies that you need. But the max total is 30,000. So other project costs can be in there. Let's say that you have a software program that you really need access to in order to author a set of videos or something like that. You would need to put that into the budget. But if you didn't have any place where the creation of those videos was even mentioned in the proposal, we'd look at that budget, look at that software program and go, what the heck is that for? So be sure to align what's in your budget with the proposal. Just be very clear in the budget section why those expenses are necessary. Now, transformation grants, because you are replacing expensive commercial materials with OER, with no-cost materials, with low-cost materials, you are creating student savings. You're making an impact. You're allowing students to take your course and have all of those materials for either zero cost or for a very small amount, a total of 40 or under per project. So that's great, but then we need to make sure that we know what you're estimating this is going to impact students per semester and then per year. That way we can track this down the line. So long as your project is continuing, and we keep checking in with you per year, hey, how's it going? Um, and if you say, yes, this is continuing, then we can track that you are still saving students a certain amount of money. So the number of students per semester, you'll need to know that average. The annual amount of students, that's the sum of the 3 semesters above. Now we do summer, fall, spring. Most of the system office measures things in summer, fall, and spring. Your institution might have 3 different summer semesters. That's totally fine. It's just you'll need to add all those summer semesters together to make one summer semester. If you've got winter session in early January or something like that before the fall semester starts, add that on. No, add that on to I mean, the spring semester, not the fall. Add that on to the spring semester afterwards. So you get this January semester, stuff starts a little bit later. Suddenly you've got a little bit more in the spring. Just add those two together. You just want a block of summer, a block of fall, and then a block of spring. And that's the fiscal year. Starts in July, so we measure summer, fall, spring as a fiscal year. The original cost of required materials, you'll need to know that. If you're recommending materials, like you could also purchase this entire dictionary set of terminology for just this subject-specific thing, but you don't have to. Do not put that into the required cost of materials because students do not have to purchase that. That's not the cost of access for the course. This only the materials that you require that they're going to need in order to participate in the course. And also look at the new cost of required materials. So if you're using just open educational resources or you're using no cost resources, then it's going to be $0, and therefore you are not subtracting any new cost from the original cost to determine the savings. If you have a low-cost project, like $35 for low-cost courseware, then the original cost, you're going to subtract that 35 to get what the savings are per student affected. Because you're not really saving them the entire original cost, you're saving them the original cost, but you're costing them $35. That's how that works. So your annual savings, the big measurement at the end, is the annual amount of students, summer, fall, and spring combined, times the savings per student, which we just looked at too. And then you get that one big number at the end. Transformation grants focus on savings. Uh, if you are affecting just 20 students a year and you're not saving them that much money, but you're making a difference, that's valid. That qualifies. Any of these projects would qualify. But if you are trying to compete with other projects that are applying for transformation grants that are making a much bigger impact, that might be a concern if there are a lot of applications for transformation grants. So be sure to compare how much you're saving students per year, your estimate, with the budget for the project. It's a good 1-year measure of exactly where the social return on investment, the amount of impact you're making is based on the amount of funding that you're getting for that 1 year. Now, we hope that this continues year on year. We've been doing this for over 10 years now. We go back and we've seen some round one projects continue to use OER and continue to use no cost resources. And that's awesome. That's generated so many student savings over the years. But when you're looking at being in an applicant pool with folks who are trying to make the biggest impact they possibly can, know that you are competing with them when you're doing a transformation grant. So take a look at your budget. If your budget is $30,000 and your annual savings are $40,000, it's pretty good. You're saving students in 1 year 10,000 more than the project costs, and then hopefully that just continues on and on, right? But if you've got a very big involved project that's going to save 20 students about let's say $30 each, so it would be $6,000 in savings per year. Well, that's going to take 5 years to get to the point where you've saved students as much as we've put into this project. That's still valid. You could create an amazing open textbook as part of this. And the intangible values that that could have as it's passed on, as it's adopted in 15 schools in California or something like that, that could be immense. But know that for USG student impact, for cost savings, which is a focus of transformation grants, you're going to be in competition with other applications that are trying to make a big difference and try to affect as many students as possible. Now, if you've got an upper level course where it's a small amount of students, you could maybe do a multi-course project and that may help. You could work across institutions. You've got friends that are teaching this over at another institution in the USG. You pair up and you double that impact, let's say. That's a great way to do it. But yeah, they qualify. We're not going to disqualify something just because the amount of effects on student savings is less than the budget. But it's a good way to look at whether or not you can compete with the applicants that are out there. So that's just a little bit of guidance on it. This is not requirements, but it's more take a look at this because it'll help. Now, for continuous improvement grants, there's a completely different focus. Let's say that you have a no-cost course or a low-cost course already. There's no need to make this big, heavy lift to transform the entire course. But you've got an open textbook that was written in 2012, and things have changed since 2012, and therefore you need to do an entirely updated open textbook. Or you've got this open textbook, but it would really help students if they were able to watch a video series on this. And you and your team are great at making videos. You've got experience at it. So you want to make like a video textbook, like the way that the textbook is, but in a visual and audio format. That's super cool. You can do that with continuous improvement grants. You're either improving the materials or you're creating new materials. Now, if you're creating any materials, and this is in the request for proposals for our grants, if you're creating anything, if you're revising anything, it's going to be under an open license. You're still sharing that out. This is state funding, it's public funding. It'll go back to the public in an open resource that can hopefully be passed along and shared at other institutions. So continuous improvement grants by design are focused on OER. That doesn't mean that everything in your course needs to be OER, but the thing you're creating or the thing you are revising does need to be open, does need to be under an open license, a Creative Commons license most of the time. Now, when we're talking about substantial revisions, we are not talking about, well, okay, in 3 years we do a course revision every single time, and it's our standard practice to update our slides and make sure that everything is just a little bit more up to date. It's a part of our regular work. That's not what a continuous improvement grant is trying to cover. We're trying to cover the extra time it would take to substantially revise something, to do an entire accessibility overhaul for an open textbook that is inaccessible at the moment, to do a second edition of an open textbook that needs it, to create an entire series of podcasts or videos or anything that's ancillary to the core materials that you're requiring in the course. Ancillary materials are a big part of creating things like continuous improvement grants. You could have an open course that is materials that you use in D2L as OER, put out on a publicly available website, something like LibGuides, in order to organize the course exactly the way that you teach it, have the stuff that you've created in there, and have the open stuff that you've been using in there too. Creating an entirely new open course would be really good for this stuff. So yeah, it needs to be a substantial amount of work beyond the usual revisions that folks do as part of their jobs. The funding structure is smaller. We used to call these mini grants. It's 2000 maximum per team member, and that can be for salary, that can be for course release, that can be for travel. Same thing in how this funding works as how transformation grant funding works. And also, you can have additional project expenses. There is a $10,000 maximum total award per grant. So the same considerations apply here when it comes to these are all maximum amounts. You can take less per person and do some project expenses in there if you want to meet the maximum amount per grant. You just can't go over it. So because continuous improvement grants focus on resources, what's going to matter here is your plan to improve and to create them. Make sure that you're not just reinventing the wheel. Run some searches for OER that are out there. Are you making existing resources over again in a way that wouldn't quite help because it's already out there? Or are you making something entirely original? Are you making a new version of something that there's nothing out there that's anywhere near as current? Or it's a completely different perspective. With the humanities, that's especially important. The authorship matters just as much as the content itself. So yeah, you have many cases to say, I'm going to create something new. Just make sure that you're not entirely duplicating something that already exists. If you're making a textbook, don't just say, we're going to make a textbook and it's going to take this long to make a textbook. Like, include what's going to be covered. A chapter outline really helps. If you're, imagine that you're a peer reviewer, you're reading this stuff, and you see that someone's going to write a textbook. It's like, okay, great. If you've got an outline of what you're going to cover, now they've got a lot more context as to what this is going to look like at the end. Um, a chapter outline really helps there. Something like accessibility would help too. How are you going to make sure that all of your photos have alt text, for example? Learning outcomes. So if you're trying to address a particular course that you're teaching, what are the learning outcomes for those courses? And how is this new set of materials, ancillaries, open course, open textbook, how is that going to meet these learning outcomes? Does it transform how folks are going to teach the course? There are some instances where um, people have taken an open textbook that went from a very like traditional teaching perspective and geared it towards a flipped classroom for the entire course of the semester. And because of that, I had a lot more activities, a lot more in-class activities, facilitated activities that became an entirely new form for that textbook. So transforming how you teach is a big part of these resources and how they can make an impact. So yeah, it's a focus on resources, so be sure to focus on the plan to create those resources. Then we've got our research grants. These are restricted to $45,000 a year. It's a smaller amount. They don't make a savings impact. They don't necessarily result in the creation of new educational materials, but they're trying to explore something bigger about how we teach with affordable materials, including OER, but not limited to that. Mainly open education, but also affordable materials as well. So the results of this project, I'm kind of starting from the end of it in order to kind of get you to what a research grant does. It ends in a research report. A research report isn't a peer-reviewed article that has gone through the entire process. Sometimes that can take a year. That could take the entire course of a grant to go through peer review processes. That's not what we're looking for. We want you to do all of the research work as part of this project, resulting in a report that gives an overview of what happened, what you found, what the implications are, and what your plans are for it afterwards. We want this to make a big research impact down the line. But if we sat here and waited for folks to get something published in an external publication, that's waiting on external organizations and forces far beyond everyone's control for a long time. So we just need a good summary of what happened, what you found, and what your future plans are. If you've got supplementary files, you can share them. We're not going to share them in the repository unless you want them to be shared. We're overly protective of privacy in that way. We want to make sure, no matter what, that we are not breaking any kind of FERPA, that we're not exposing any personal identifiable information of students or anything like that. So we won't be sharing those supplementary files unless you absolutely say, hey, we have anonymized this data. We'd love for it to be out there. We can do that in that case. And of course, these research reports are going to be under an open license, under a Creative Commons license. So yeah, the report will have some information about the project team. It will have a summary of the project. What were your goals, your objectives? What were you trying to do? Your research design, your methods, what happened? What research work took place? Your findings. So the basic overview of the findings. You don't have to go and put in Excel tables into a Word document. That's not what we're looking for. But how would they be applicable down the line? What would the implications be for these findings if we kept expanding on this research and saying, hey, if this is true, like we should do OER this way, we should do software this way. That would be what we're looking for here. You want a description of your supplementary files in here if you're providing them, just so that if a researcher would like to see them later on, we can ensure that they're anonymized and they can see those so that they can get that work done. Just a description, though. We don't need the whole thing. And of course, your future plans. That doesn't just mean peer-reviewed publications. That also means conference papers. That also means presentations. That means putting them on a website, making a new database out of your research. That kind of stuff is really important for both us and for anybody who read this and went, oh, I wonder what happened to it. Things to consider that are especially part of a research report. If you're doing research work, you're going to need to probably work with your institutional review board and make sure that that research is approved by them or even marked exempt by them. If you think something is exempt, usually you still have to run it by the IRB for them to determine, yes, this is exempt from that stuff. That usually comes with organizational improvement research, stuff like that. And when you're publishing in a journal, we would love for you to publish in an open access publication, but that doesn't mean that we are requiring it. Not every subject area has open access publications that are used in things like promotion and tenure. So it's not something that we wouldn't want this to be detrimental to the work that you're doing. So we would love for you to publish in an open access publication, but it is not required. These have a focus on research impact, so not savings impact or the impact of the resources you've created, but really focusing on the topic you're exploring, what it could possibly mean when this takes place, and does it go beyond the normal grant reports that we see? So in a transformation grant, you're going to be looking at changes in overall grades. You're going to be looking at overall drop, fail, and withdraw rates. In order to very broadly answer the question, did your transformation create a huge difference somewhere? Usually we're trying to say, okay, you've saved students a lot of money. Did it hurt the course? Did it improve things? That's awesome. But especially if it's the same, that's a net gain for students because they don't have to pay for their resources or they have to pay very little for their resources now. But at the same time, learning outcomes stayed the same. Retention stayed the same, that type of thing. Yeah, that's what's already covered in a transformation grant. We're looking for something more focused and we're looking for more. So if you're thinking of research questions, look at something that goes beyond, we put OER in our course, was it good? Um, think about like smaller topics that have to do with instruction, that have to do with student perceptions, that have to do with student performance, disaggregating data to see if a certain type of student does better with affordable materials, with open materials, with what had been authored than with commercial materials. That kind of stuff goes deeper than your usual grant report. And if you're still just looking at one course, the way that a transformation grant report would, think of how institutional research data could help with this, and that's especially data disaggregation. You'll have grades data, but you may not know how that student has done over the past 3 years. You may not know what demographics these students are a part of from the data that you have on hand. So if your institutional research office can help with this, that would be great. Of course, that needs to be feasible as well. So, if you have an institutional research department and you want some data from them, do you have permission to get that data? Will it take them extra time to get that data to you? Do they even have the time for it? You'd probably want to meet with them before you submit a proposal. I'm saying this because we've seen these problems before. Folks had some really good ambitions for doing exactly this, and then they realized that, well, they can't get these columns of exactly what they want because institutional research doesn't give those to faculty members no matter what. Or um, something like, okay, we can give you exactly what you're looking for, but it's going to take a lot of cleanup. It's going to take some reformatting. And for you to get it in the format that you need in order to run like SPSS, that's going to take us a couple of months on our end to get it done. You would have to plan that into your project if that's the case. You need to have a timeline, of course, and you need to meet a deadline. So be sure to talk to the folks who provide institutional research data before this starts. And of course, your research methods. Who could help you with this? You're going to be teaching these courses in the fall and the spring. Uh, if you're going to be running research at the same time, that's a lot of extra work. That may not even be possible depending on what you're planning. If it's something that's taking place while you're teaching the course, like synchronously, you'll need somebody to collaborate with you on that. Also, because of previous experiences with what we've seen in research grants, collaboration is required. You need somebody who is not part of the instructional faculty team that you've got for this project to collaborate with you on the project. That means you can bring in someone like an institutional researcher, someone who already has plenty of experience on this. Bring in an instructional designer who knows a lot about the science of teaching and learning and could help you with educational research. Instructional technologists who can help you with the data backend stuff, especially. Librarians who can help out with project management. They have in the past in these projects. In fact, they've managed turnover where the faculty member from this project that was on a research project went to another institution. Well, what do you do at that point? The librarians took over, they got the data, they ran as much analysis as they possibly could, and they did things like usage statistics, which librarians are great at. And they were able to present some pretty good stuff by the end of the project, even though that turnover happened. And student assistants can help with this quite a bit. So be sure to keep them in mind as well. So the funding structure is the same as it is for continuous improvement grants. 2,000 per team member maximum. Additional project expenses are allowed. $10,000 maximum for the total award. And for more details on this, of course, the request for proposals is there. So let's talk a little bit about timing. Round 28, the projects are going to end at the end of fall 2026. So we want them to start near the end of fall 2026 as well. The application deadline is November 3rd. November 4th is when peer reviews start. So as soon as the application deadline is done, we bring these out to our peer reviewers that we've already selected. They review over the course of 2 weeks. Then we have a little bit, about a week, to review materials here as administrators to make sure that everything fits the guidelines, to make sure that our lineup is distributed well across our institutions, and that everything really fits the mission and the vision of this program. Then we have notifications on December 1st. We may be contacting folks in the middle of this if we have clarification questions. So let's say that a peer reviewer is like, what's going on with this? They say this, but we're not exactly sure. We would reach out to you in between there hopefully before the notification deadline, we get an answer that clarifies it. We can make a little bit of an edit, and now we're good. On January 9th, so as we come back to our institutions and we're about to start teaching, that's when the online kickoff is going to happen. We do this because in the past, we used to run this in December or a little bit after the notifications went out. And what would happen is the kickoff would happen, work might get started a little bit, but we're also doing contract stuff in the middle there. Then holiday break happens. Then you come back in January and you go, what the heck did we do in December? So the online kickoff moves to January to kind of be this fresh start for the spring semester when everything gets started. There's a midpoint check-in to see how everybody is doing and to have folks talk with each other about how things are going on June 12th. That's especially about social engagement in that way. There's some breakout rooms where everyone's going to be sharing their feedback in a candid way with some facilitators who have been through this process before, but aren't us. So they can report back to us, say, here's some issues that we heard, uh, some things that could be fixed in a later time. So for the kickoffs, be sure to have those dates handy because at least one team member needs to be in the kickoff meeting and the midpoint check-in meeting. We especially want the project lead to be there. As many folks as possible are welcome, but needs to be at least one. All members are required to participate in an asynchronous training too. That's a web link that we will be sending out to you with the notification that you've been accepted at that point. If you've completed that training within a year, you're exempt from that requirement. Not much changes within a year for those, but past a year, you'll have to redo that stuff. Just a primer like, here's what open licensing is, here's how it works, here's what accessibility is, here's how that works, to make sure that we're all on the same page as we get started. So we're about to run through how to apply. Before that happens, does anybody have any questions about what we just went through? Put those out in the chat if you would like, so that we can get to those before we jump into application forms. Okay, some of you might be typing, and that's all right. We will take a look at the chat as we keep going. But what we're going to do is move on to the application forms now. Uh, I'm going to start sharing my screen after this slide to show you how these application forms look. It is a little different than what it used to be. So if you're thinking, well, you know, when you call up something and there's a robocall that says, please listen to all these options as they have changed, these really have changed. This is a very big change from last year. Okay, how to apply? Pretty simple. It's the same stuff. You bookmark the apply for a grant page. That one is super important. Be sure to read through the RFP because that is the request for proposals that is shared as part of the agreement. It's like, here is exactly what this grant project is. Here's how the process is. Your business office will be operating off of that RFP too. All those details apply to the project. Be sure to look through your categories rubric. That's what you're going to be reviewed on by peer reviewers. And some of why everything has changed is to make your applications line up with the rubrics more easily and to allow peer reviewers, when they're looking at the rubrics, to evaluate your applications more easily with those rubrics. Complete the docx proposal, so your Word document. That's the one you're going to want to do first. You don't need online access for it. You're able to just do it on your own. That is going to have all of the details that you'll need to go into the final online form. Be sure to start your letter of support and your acknowledgement forms as soon as you've got your proposal ready. That way, you know what you're going to do. You know how long it's going to take. And from there, you're able to run that by your your dean, your department chair to say, hey, is this okay with you? You're able to run it by the business office to say, this is what we're going to do. Is there anything we need to think about as this process moves forward? And yeah, once you have that proposal ready, run that by them so that the signature process can run its course. Oh, Kalisa Simon from Kennesaw State. What is the process of making materials for an area uh, with multiple classes? So, if you're talking about a continuous improvement grant that has multiple courses attached to it, uh, in your proposal, you would have a setup to who's going to be authoring what, how much is going to be created, and for which courses. It's going to be pretty clear in the application where you would put that stuff. Um, if it's something that has to do with the transformation grants and the savings counts, that may be something different. So if you have any additional questions on that as we go through this, Carlisa, let me know. That it could be something different from what I'm reading here. Oh, okay. We're going to do an application walkthrough now. So what I'm going to do is share a Word document with you. And it's going to be the most complicated one, the transformation grant application, to show you what the big one looks like. And then the other two are similar, so I'll show you what those look like as well. So you should be able to see this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Whoop, if it lets me. Teams is popping things up at the same time. There we go. I'm just going to, there we go. A little bit more like that. All right. Good. So the first page just gives you some information. Here's the apply for a grant page. Be sure to bookmark it. We link it twice. That's how important it is. Read the RFP. That's also on the apply for a grant page. If you have italic text in here, that's in there. That's meant for clarification. So you can get rid of it. The team information. So this is the really easy stuff, right? What's your name, your email, your position? Submitter means if somebody else is applying for the grant for you. Let's say you've got a grants office that submits all the applications at the same time. I was at an institution once that where every grant application had to be submitted by the provost. That was really weird, but it does happen from time to time. So there are times where the applicant is not the same thing as the submitter. If it is the same thing, just put your name, email, and title here, and you don't have to worry about this part. If you're submitting on behalf of somebody else, who is the project lead? That's the applicant, and then your stuff is the submitter over here. We want to know who to stay in contact with if they're submitting on somebody else's behalf. Here's the list of team members. So anyone else who is in this project, including the project lead, you as the applicant, include yourself on this list. Your name, position title, email address. We don't need much else. Try to keep the name to just your first and last name. If there's doctor in there, then when we start doing things like filtering things out, sorting stuff by alphabetical order, we're going to have an alphabetical order list with first name, last name, and then we're going to have a bunch of D's because they all say doctor. We have to get rid of all of that stuff because there are so many. Nearly everyone's a doctor when it comes to these team members. So we want to make sure that we just have first name, last name here, positions, email address here. Impact data. So this is where we're talking about cost. So this is how we would go by course. And this is going to be more than you have to enter on the online form. This is the real details here. So here's course number 1. You do not have to put, like, let's say you're teaching 6 different sections of English 1101. Don't put it section by section. You only want all sections of the course in one course. So, and all instructors. You don't have to do 6 different sections of English 1101 and 6 different tables of this. So here's the course title, course number. Here's the course instructors. The average number of students enrolled in the affected course per year. And then we have summer, fall, and spring. The same thing here, students enrolled. The original required commercial materials. So provide a link to where this price is listed, and also be sure to put in what these materials are, so that we know what they are and we can check on them to make sure that nothing drastic has happened to the price since we wound up reading the application. So the original cost per student, so we're saying student section enrollment here because students can take more than one course, and that can get a little complicated when we say per student. What we're saying here is per student enrolled in your course. So one student in English 1101 would have to pay this much for the required commercial materials. This is the original cost in number 6. 7 is the average post-project cost per student section enrollment. So like we said before, a lot of times this is 0, but if you're using low-cost materials, it could be something other than 0. The average post-project savings per student section enrollment. This is the total savings. You subtract this new cost from the old cost to get this one, and this is per student. Then here, this is total annual student savings per academic year. You multiply this one, which is the post-project savings, by row number 1, the number of students per year, to get the number of students saving the amount in number 8, leading to a total, which is row 9. So once you start working this out, it should be pretty obvious. But if you have any questions on this, please do let us know. We say that you can copy and paste this table as much as you want, or you can delete things as much as you want. Let's say you're only doing one course, just keep course 1. You can delete everything below it. If you have more than that, though, you can add more courses than 4. We just don't want this application form to be forever long. Okay, now we're going into the total savings impact. So you've listed all these courses, but let's put it into total terms for what your project's going to do. How many students are affected per summer in the whole project? And what's the cost savings for these students for the whole project? The total cost savings. So this is that row 9 one that you've done. The total estimated students per fall semester, total cost savings per fall semester, students per spring, cost savings per spring, and then per year, total students per year, and total estimated cost savings per year. This is the numerical impact that this is doing for USG students. Then we've got priority categories. These are in the RFP. They allow you to get a few extra points if you meet them. You do not disqualify if you don't. So for example, departmental scaling, this means that you are affecting every single instance of the course in your department. Collaborative projects with professional support, that means you're involving, kind of like what we say with research grants, someone who is not just part of the instructional faculty team to ensure that this is a successful project. So an instructional designer, an instructional technologist, a librarian, folks like that meet this. And then student participation. Now, all students fill out things like end of the course surveys. That's not what we're talking about here. If you have a student who's going to work with you as an editor, if you are involving students in the creation of materials as part of their assignments, the kind of thing that the open education folks will call open pedagogy, that's student participation. Look at the RFP though. There's more about this there. Upper level campus collaborations. This is for upper level courses that have a hard time making a large scale, working across institutions to increase that scale. Now here's the narrative. First of all, the rationale and the project goals. So where is your institution at with this project? Why does it affect your institution? to do this? And what are the overall goals you're trying to achieve? Not just saving students money, but are you increasing their access overall? Are you improving instruction overall? That kind of stuff you want to put here. This should be at least 2 paragraphs long. The materials that you're going to adopt, adapt, or create, provide links if you have them. If you're going to do a large collection of resources, describe the list and you can just send it over to us if you would like. If you've got a huge amount of resources that you're going to do, just list where they're from and or variously where they are from, and that should be okay. If you're planning on hosting these resources in a place that isn't just what we do, which is hosting it in our repository, let folks know. For instance, if you're going to create something on Pressbooks and share it out with the Pressbooks community, that's really cool. Put that there. Now, how will your project affect student course materials? So, for example, did the department commit to it? That makes it even more interesting than just the numbers themselves. If you're teaching a lab component, are you considering the lab materials as part of this? Uh, if you have instructors in the same course and they are teaching with materials that vary with the prices, mark that here as kind of like notes. Like, okay, the numbers up top are one thing, but here are the details. Here's exactly what's going on. If you have an entirely new course, this is where you mention that some of the savings are theoretical. We would have to teach with these materials if we don't have the time to build them ourselves. And these materials cost a certain amount. So because we are not yet using them as required materials, we have listed them there, but really what we're doing is an entirely new course. You would want to mention that here. This happens more often than you would think. This is the place to put it. And then instructional impact. So we're not just trying to save students money when it comes to these grants. We're ultimately aiming at student success. So how will this project lead to increased student success? Does it change how folks teach the course? How can it lead to the improvement of, let's say you have an entire department, how can it lead to an improvement in that department for instruction, for meeting learning outcomes? That's going to be at least 2 paragraphs here as well. Then your measures. So how are you going to measure course level retention, student satisfaction, student performance? If you're going to go beyond that and be really outstanding about it, do even more insights into this. Do even more cool quantitative and qualitative measures, but list them all here. And if you need IRB approval, indicate this here. This is the section that's really changed. In the past, we've just asked you to make an action plan and left it up to you. Now we have tables for it, which should allow you to make it way more clear to the reviewers what you're considering doing. So here's the team member, here's their project role, and here's these primary project responsibilities. So for example, if you have somebody here who is the instructional designer, they are going to be providing support with making all materials accessible. That's going to be their primary responsibility. Or they're going to be in charge of creating the videos. That's where you put this. Nothing about time yet, nothing about a timeline, but here are the roles. Down here are the tasks. So let's say that you have to create an entire open textbook. Well, how much time is that going to require? What's the description of that task? What's going to happen here? That's where you put these tasks and how much time they're going to take. Because these grants cover how much time it takes to do this stuff, you want to make sure that you're outlining what these tasks are. Then there's the timeline. So where are your major milestones and when will they happen? If you're going to be creating an entirely new open textbook, for example, when is the first draft done? When is the review period? When do you make your revisions? And when is the new draft going to be done? When are you going to put everything into D2L if you're going to be doing it that way? Be sure to have your big events, your big milestones here. If you're going to have a departmental kickoff meeting because you've got like 15 members on your team, have that here as a big event that's in the date. But end it with the submission of your final report. This final report for round 28 is due Friday, December 18th, 2026. It's going to end with the submission of the final report. The reason why we say this is that sometimes we see timelines that go way far in the future without a final report in there, and then we don't know if they're meeting the timeline or not. Additional project expenses. So if there's anything else in here, list it here. And then your entire budget here, by line. Here's the name, faculty, instructor, cost of whatever budget item it is. Don't provide a range. Don't say $500 to $600 because then we won't be able to add that up. We're going to have to start averaging it. Just give the direct cost. And then you add up the total award request at the end here. So this is just making what we used to leave more open, more clear, both to us and to reviewers as they go through this. Sustainability plan is the same thing as usual, mentioning how this will carry forward in the future. And then there's things about here's the other documents you'll need and the accepted terms. Things need to be under an open license. Things need to be accessible. They are only acceptable if they are accessible. And the required events, the kickoff meeting, and the midpoint check-in are right in here. So that is the entire Transformation Grants document. Thank you, Nikita, for addressing the chat. If we have an upper level course and instructors and it's not an issue of scale, does that qualify? That so the collaborative. Okay, so Nikita's answering the collaborative one. Like if you had a more if you added a librarian or instructional designer, it does not meet upper level campus collaborations. That is okay. It is a small amount of points that add on if you have a priority category. But if you have a good proposal that makes a big impact, if scale is not an issue, you're going to do fine in competing among other transformation grant proposals. Yeah, yeah. It can get confusing because collaboration's in a couple of those categories. So I've already spent a lot of time going through that, but that is really the big one. The other two have sections that are very similar. They have action plans. They have things like describe what your team is. They just don't have stuff like the data part of it, the savings per student, because continuous improvement grants and research grants aren't aimed at that at all. So what I want to show you very quickly here is the online form. So I'm going to the online application form. This one hasn't changed that much. Let's say I'm applying for a transformation grant. I want 20,000 for the team. I've already done all of this on my Word document. Here's the application name, institution, title, email, test@test.com. Is the applicant the same person as the one submitting the application? If I say no, you'll bring up the submitter. If you say yes, you won't. Including the applicant, how many people are in the grant project team? I'm going to say 5. So now you put in the team members' names. So here we've got test, 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 etc. I'm going to even say here, we'll do autocomplete because that's easier. Test, test, test. Yes. And here. And here. Goodness. That's a lot of them. Next. All right. So before you had this big matrix that you had to put all of the total numbers into. And it went so far that you had to scroll this hidden bar in order to get across the page to it. We are not doing that anymore. Thank goodness. You have all of this in your Word document. Students affected per summer, savings per summer, students affected per fall, savings per fall, students affected per spring, savings per spring, students affected per year, savings per year. That's the big change. The rest of this is just about the same. And it's about the same on all of the applications at that point. The big difference is in the Word documents that they're more focused on tables that make everything a lot more clear. So it is 11:59. I wanted to make sure that I went through the whole application process and what to consider before we got out of here. Um, you can stay past 12 if you have questions, but if you do not, that is okay. That is totally fine. It was great to see you. I really look forward to hearing from you all. So I'm going to answer Kushi Gupta's question here. Can we collaborate with an industry expert and list salary for them in the budget? So if you collaborate with anybody who is not part of the institution, check with the institution first. If they can bring somebody in as a consultant, then that is fine. It works mechanically. They can compensate that person for it. For example, if you're going to be creating a website and you've got all the technical expertise, but you don't have graphic design expertise on the team and you don't have a graphic design department that much at your institution, so you contract out to a graphic designer and they have their own company. That's all right. You can do that. You can bring somebody in as a consultant. Um, that's fine. Just know that your application is in competition with others. So let's say that you were going to bring in a textbook company and they were going to create a textbook and retain the rights. Okay, well, I mean, that's a plan, but that's not a plan that necessarily meets our mission, our vision, or why these grants exist in the first place. So it is technically possible to bring in an industry expert. Which industry that is, how it applies, why you need it, make sure that's on the application and it's clear to folks what that is. Like, let's say that you've got this budget item and it just says Kushi Gupta from Smiling Happy People Incorporated. And that's it. And it's not mentioned in the application at all. People will be very confused. Be sure to illustrate why it is that that person is being brought in as a consultant, and you should be okay. I hope that answered the question there. Okay, so that's going to be it for us. I'm really looking forward to another round of applications and to kick off another round of amazing projects. And so is Nikita, of course. So thank you all for attending. And if you have any questions, be sure to email us over on our thing. Let me just. Oh no, it's not bringing it back my PowerPoint. Well, okay. So we are our first name dot our last name at usg.edu. So jeff.galant at usg.edu, nikita.afaha at usg.edu. I'm going to end the event now and stop recording. Thank you all, and I will hopefully hear from you soon.